While America warns the world about Chinese loans, the United States itself has secretly received over $200 billion from Chinese state banks. Yes, you heard that right. The country that lectures India, Indonesia, and African nations about debt traps is itself the largest recipient of Chinese government money. But here's what gets more shocking. China controls 90% of the world's rare earth processing, owns critical infrastructure in American airports and energy facilities, and has been buying American technology companies to steal their secrets. And somehow, nobody's talking about it. Why is America hiding this massive financial relationship with China? How did China manage to put so much money into American airports, energy, and other important areas without anyone noticing? And most importantly, for us in India, what does this tell us about the real game China is playing? Because if America itself cannot protect its infrastructure from Chinese control, what does that mean for India's security and future? Let's find out what's really going on. This is not some conspiracy theory. This is documented research from AidData, a US-based research institute that studied over 100 Chinese loan contracts and discovered something that shocked the world. Between 2000 and 2023, Chinese state-owned China Development Bank and Exim Bank gave out more money to American companies and infrastructure than they gave to many developing countries. Think about that for a second. America, the richest country in the world, the superpower that tells everyone else not to take Chinese money, is itself taking more Chinese money than anyone else. And they kept it hidden, completely hidden. But why? Why would America do this? The answer reveals how geopolitics actually works at the highest level. See, when American leaders warn countries like India to be careful about Chinese loans, they are not just talking about money or safety. They're talking about control and influence. America wants to stop China from gaining power in important regions. But inside America, it's a different story. American companies needed money, and Chinese banks had money. So they made a deal, quietly, secretly, without telling the American public what was happening. Now let's understand how this money actually entered America. You may wonder, if China sent so much money, why didn't anyone notice it in the news? The answer is simple. China hid the money very carefully. They use something called shell companies. These are fake companies. No office, no employees, no real business. They only exist on paper. China set up dozens of these companies in places like Cayman Islands, Bermuda, and even Delaware in the US. These places are famous for secrecy. To help you picture this, imagine a small movie scene. At 2:14 a.m., a Chinese bank quietly sends $50 million to a tiny shell company registered in the Cayman Islands. This company has no staff, just a name on a file. A few hours later, that Cayman company transfers the same money to another shell company in Bermuda. No questions asked. By the next morning, the Bermuda company pushes the money to a consulting firm in Delaware. Again, another shell company. Now, this Delaware company invests the money into an American airport expansion project or an energy startup. Everything looks clean because the money came from a US-based company. But the truth is, the money started in China. It simply changed names 3 times. And now, nobody can trace it back. This is financial camouflage, the highest level of hiding money in plain sight. But China didn't stop at using shell companies. They added another layer of hiding which is called confidentiality clauses. These clauses are basically gag orders. They say clearly, you cannot tell anyone about this deal. Not your government, not your parliament, not your citizens, not even other banks. This means the country taking the loan is forced to stay silent, even if the loan affects the whole nation. To show you how serious this is, here's a simple example. The government of Uganda had taken a big loan for a highway project. For almost 4 years, even their own parliament didn't know the real terms of the loan because the contract had a Chinese confidentiality clause. So when people asked, how much debt do we owe? The officials literally said, we cannot reveal it. Not because they didn't want to, but because they were legally forbidden from speaking. The result? Citizens found out about the loan years later, when the debt had already grown much bigger. This is how confidentiality clauses hide financial truths from the public. Now compare this to Western banks and the World Bank. Out of 142 Western loans, only 2 had such gag orders. But after 2015, every single Chinese loan came with one. Every single one. That is not an accident. That is a strategy. A system designed to keep the world in the dark. So now we have a situation where American companies took loans from Chinese banks, but they were not allowed to tell the American government. They couldn't tell Congress. They couldn't even tell the public. Why would any country allow this? Because the American system is huge and complicated, with many agencies and regulators. This made it easy for Chinese money to slip through unnoticed. And there's another reason. American companies got cheap loans. Chinese state banks are not focused on profit like private banks. They care about China's long-term strategic goals. Now, here's what China actually bought with all this money. And this is where it becomes relevant to India's future. China used this hidden money to quietly enter America's energy system. They didn't buy oil fields or pipelines directly, they targeted something even more powerful: LNG export terminals. These are huge facilities that freeze natural gas and ship it to other countries. They invested in projects in Texas and Louisiana, including well-known sites like the Freeport LNG terminal in Texas and the Cameron LNG terminal in Louisiana. Why are these places so important? Because these terminals are like the taps to America's energy kitchen. Whoever has access to them can see which countries America sells energy to, how much energy is being exported, at what price, and how these exports support America's strategy in Asia. And China didn't just watch. By having stakes in these facilities, China gained strategic leverage. They received inside information about America's energy flow towards Asian countries, especially US allies like Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan. Now imagine if a conflict ever happened. China could use this knowledge to disrupt supply chains, slow down shipments, or create confusion in the global energy market. That would hurt America's allies first, and America's strategy in the Pacific region. So this was not just an investment. It was a planned entry into the most sensitive part of America's energy network. But energy was just the beginning. China also quietly moved into data centers, giant buildings packed with computer servers that stored the world's most important information. Northern Virginia, right near Washington, D.C., has about 15% of all the world's hyperscale data centers. Why does that matter? Because whoever controls physical access to data centers controls the world's digital nervous system. These buildings don't just store random files, they hold government secrets and policy files, military research and intelligence, bank transactions and financial records, even personal data from millions of Americans. And Chinese companies got stakes in these facilities. Now think about it. A foreign competitor doesn't just watch from afar. They have physical access to America's most sensitive digital infrastructure. This is like letting someone peek into the brain of a supercomputer that runs the country. Then there are the airports. John F. Kennedy in New York and Los Angeles International Airport. These are not just any airports. They're gateways for military equipment, diplomatic personnel, and strategic cargo moving to the Pacific region. Chinese entities financed terminal operations at these airports. That gives them visibility into what military equipment is moving where. That gives them information about American military deployments to Asia. And the oil pipelines, the Dakota Access Pipeline, the Matterhorn Express natural gas pipeline. These aren't fancy names. These are critical infrastructure that move America's energy to refineries and markets. Chinese money financed stakes in these pipelines. So if China wanted to disrupt American energy supply during a crisis, they have infrastructure inside America that could theoretically be disrupted. Let me paint you a picture of what's happening here. Imagine China is playing chess on a global board, right? On one side, they're controlling 90% of rare earth minerals processing, the minerals needed to make everything from smartphones to fighter jets. On another side, they're taking stakes in American infrastructure, energy, data, ports, airports. On yet another side, they're buying American technology companies to steal their engineering secrets. And all of this is connected. All of it serves one purpose: making sure that no country can compete with China without depending on China. This is what China's leaders call Made in China 2025. The real goal is to produce 70% of high-tech components inside China by 2025. Xi Jinping even called it the roadmap to national rejuvenation. It focuses on 10 key sectors: semiconductors, robotics, aerospace, ocean engineering, advanced rail, electric vehicles, electrical equipment, new materials, pharmaceuticals, and agricultural machinery. Every one of these sectors is important for both military strength and economic power. Here's the truly shocking part. Before 2015, When this plan was announced, around 46% of Chinese loans connected to sensitive technology went into these key sectors. But after 2015, that number jumped to 88%. Why? Because China changed its entire lending strategy to support the Made in China 2025 plan. The Chinese government instructed its banks, stop giving loans for normal infrastructure. Start giving money to help buy foreign technology companies. And that's exactly what happened. For India, this is a warning, a wake up call. If India allows the same hidden foreign investments and lack of transparency, it could face serious risks in the future. India has already seen hints of this with Paytm's investment from Ant Financial and the widespread use of Chinese smartphones. Small openings like these can grow into strategic control if they are not carefully monitored. If India doesn't act now, in 10 years, it could discover that critical infrastructure is controlled by foreign companies, and by then, it might be too late. Because what happened quietly in America for 20 years could also happen in India. It might even be happening already. And unlike America, which can afford to find out about Chinese control later because it has huge military power, India does not have that luxury. India must recognize this threat early and take strong action to stop it. So, the real question for you is this: should India completely block Chinese investment and focus only on making its own technology? Or should India accept some Chinese money but strictly protect truly critical areas? And most importantly, how should India adjust its China policy when Chinese financial operations are so advanced and so large in scale? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if this video gave you new insights, don't forget to subscribe. It really motivates me to create even more for you. Jai Hind.